Hello and welcome to Froggy Frog Crochet and this guide on all about foundation chains. So let's look at the what, the why and the how about how you make foundation chains and how you use them for your crochet. So let's take a look at our foundation chain. So if we look at, this is kind of the way that foundation chains are usually pictured, and you get this braided effect. You've got these V's that kind of sit inside the next V, making chains as you go down. But actually, foundation chains are made up of 3 different loops. And if I turn it over, you can see there's this back loop there as well. Okay. So you have these 2 loops on top and this third loop, the back bump on the bottom. Now, typically when you see people working into foundation chains, you'll see them going through one of these loops, but you can also work into the back chain as well. But the easiest way to work into a foundation chain is through one of these V loops at the top. Now this chain is nice and even, but I have decades worth of crocheting experience to make one this neat. And when you're learning to crochet, it's going to take time and practice to make a foundation chain that looks like this. When you're first starting out, you are not going to have a foundation chain that looks this neat. You're going to have chains that some will be really tight together, some will be kind of really loose with the loops far apart. It's just not going to look even. And that's because you haven't learned how to control your tension yet. And tension control is a skill that takes time to learn. But once you do, you'll have really neat looking stitches. So the reason your crochet can look very untidy when you're first learning is your tension. So let's look at how we make our foundation chain and how we can control the tension. So how do you make a nice straight chain? So chains are the foundation of crochet, and most projects start with a chain of some description. And chains are the easiest thing to do in crochet. And all you do is pull your hook through loop after loop. But how do you get nice even chains? And the secret to a nice even chain is tension. And it all starts with how you hold your yarn. So I hold my yarn like this, and that helps me keep my tension straight. So my yarn is under my hand, I bring it over my little finger, pull it up to my index finger, and then I pinch it. So my yarn is over or being held by 4 of my fingers. And then I'm working into this middle section here. Grab your hook, wrap it around, and that is enough to secure your yarn to start your first chain. So I just grip where it meets, pull through. There's my first chain, and my yarn is now secure. Holding my yarn like this, it helps me keep my tension. This feeder around my little finger, it stops the yarn from coming through too quickly. And having it over this finger here means I can control the tension, move my finger back and forth a bit, and stops the yarn running away from itself. So I keep this thread of yarn here with a nice, consistent tension. Now that takes practice. You're not going to get a nice, even tension from your yarn overnight. You just have to keep practicing it, and it will come in time. So you'll get nice, even chains. See, if I increase my tension and make this yarn really taut and hold it really tight, I start getting much smaller, much tighter chains, which are much harder to work into because there's very little gap inside. So the tighter you hold your yarn, the more difficult you make those chains to work into and get your hook in. But if I loosen up and crochet really loosely, I get much bigger chains that are really gappy, very easy to work into. So relaxing that tension makes these loops much bigger. And that means when you work actual stitches into these chains, you're going to have a lot of space left over. It takes practice to work out what tension works for you, both in terms of comfort, ease of working into, and the final look. And really, there is no way anyone can decide that for you. You have to work out for yourself and just practice. And over time, you will find that your chains become more even and that your tension becomes more consistent and that you will make the tension chain that works for you. So this is the front, and you got your top loop and your bottom loop. And if you turn it over, you've got the back bump. But which loop should you work into, and should you work into a different one depending on what you're making? Well, yes. So when you're starting your foundation row, there's usually two ways of thinking. You either work into this top loop here, so just going into the top of that one, so you have a loop on your hook and leave two down below, or work it into the back bump. So what's the difference? The difference is how it looks when you're finished. If you go into the top loops and make a stitch into there, you're left with this. Oh, let me make a few stitches and hopefully make it easier to show. Get some single crochets in there. But you're left with these two loops at the bottom. Now, as you work onto the other side of your foundation chain, you can still work into the bottom of those stitches. Absolutely fine. So if you're working at the other side of your foundation chain, so if you're making an oval, say for baby booty, a silver shoe, or you're going to add a border, it doesn't really matter. The only time it would really make a difference is if you work into the back bumps. What it does is it forces the other two loops to turn. So instead of sitting flat like this, they will turn onto their side. So if you're looking to make a nice, neat, straight edge that just looks nice and neat because you're not using a border and you're just going to leave it as it is, using that back bump there on the back, it gives a much neater look. And it forces the loop down. And working into the back bump, if you then work on the other side, if I turn that over, it looks like top loops. So it's easier to work into the other side of your foundation chain if you use the back bumps. So really it comes down to preference. Getting started into the back bumps can feel a little bit tricky at first. But once you get used to it, it's actually not bad. And working into the other side of your chain suddenly becomes much easier because it feels like you're working into the top of a normal stitch. Because now it's turned, it just looks like the normal loops of a stitch. Which, if you're not going to work into the other side of your chain, you're not going to add a border, say, you should add a border for most things, but if you just wanted to, using the border to neaten it up, You don't have to. If you just work into the back bumps, you've got a nice neat finish right there. But, I mean, I still do it. I still just work into that top loop. And if you're working into the other side of the chain and you don't have too much trouble in getting your stitches in, so if I take those 2 stitches away, you're working into these. If you don't find that too troublesome, then it's not a bother. So then it comes down to personal preference. So then it just really depends on how you want your finished look. There's no right or wrong way. It's everyone's own decision. But that is the options for working into your foundation chain. And in case you're wondering if I haven't mentioned the option of going through both of these and leaving one loop at the bottom, to be honest, it looks terrible. I've never been a fan of that look at all. It's far neater if you just use the one loop or the back bump. I have seen some people who just crochet around the entire chain, but then of course that leaves no room to then crochet on the other side. And there is all about foundation chains. For more crochet tips, how to crochet, how to improve your crochet, subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, come on over to our Facebook group, Fogarty Frogs Ribbons and Stitch, and join our fabulous friendly community for all things crochet related. So thank you for watching. I shall see you next time for the next video. Bye for now.